Welcome to Mojo Talks. I'm Eric, and this week we talked about the Olympics, but we talked about it through the lens of entertainment. And I think it bears talking about it in more of a business sense. And so we've got Ash with us today. How you doing, Ash?
Very good, thank you.
And so we've been doing a couple of these talks lately, and they're all about business and digital media. So I think we have a show. But we need a name. Why don't we baptize it something that we've brought up a couple of times, which is context is king.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's obviously a play off of content is king. And I guess in a later show we could explain why we're going with that. But I think today we want to talk a little bit of the Olympics.
Yeah, I think we should break it down to the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'm wondering, let's start with the good. Yeah, have you been watching? What's good, Ash?
Last week I happened to mention in passing, like, who cares about the Olympics? And somebody actually emailed me saying, you can't possibly be serious. And no, you're right. I mean, I'm a big sports fan, love sports. Growing up, many memories of the Olympics. Watch it pretty regularly, no matter what time zone it's in. And I think that is the magic. I mean, there is this element, despite all the backdrop, which we're going to talk about, there is this element of purity and just awesomeness about the Olympics that brings everybody together. I mean, this year you see North and South Korea playing under a unified banner, which is really nice. And I mean, like, this year, even if you take the possible negatives, you could easily turn it into a positive with, like, the NHL players not being there, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But it does actually put a spotlight on the women's hockey, which has really improved quite a bit. I got two daughters, 9 and 7, and earlier this week, my wife was like, oh, it's the ice hockey, do you want to watch it? I made it a point of getting up from my desk and sitting down and watching it, not just because it was entertaining, but to kind of signal to my girls, like, hey, women's hockey, just as important as men. So a lot of nice storylines.
Did they get into it?
Yeah, I mean, they like sports. They do, they're not necessarily at the age where they're going to lace them up, but yeah, no, they're definitely into sports.
I also had the feeling, though, that this year people just seemed a little bit less jazzed about the Olympics. I don't know if you have any idea why.
You know what? There's been, a lot of negativity around the Olympics growing, for one. And two, the time zone is always a bit iffy.
Yeah.
The time zone does make it a bit complicated. But I mean, if we are going to segue from the good to the bad, I mean, look, the Olympics 17, 18 years ago, not because we're biased as Canadians, could have picked Dick Pound. Great name. Could have picked Dick Pound as the head of the IOC, who would have taken a tougher stance on doping and bribery. And then they went with figureheads who are seen more as, puppets, so to speak. And they've kind of looked the other way when it comes to bribery.
It's been mired in controversy.
It's been mired in controversy before even the most recent shocking allegations, which we'll get to in the next segment. But basically, if you take a look at just what there's a reality that maybe most cities won't even want to bid for the Olympics. Rio estimated a $3 billion cost. They spent 13. Russia said it's going to cost us 12 billion. They spent 50 billion. Now, they made a profit of 50 somehow. I don't know what math that works.
Well, a lot of it probably ended up in Putin's
for sure, exactly. I mean, Athens, I visited Greece in the summer. Nice roads that they built in time for the Olympics, but nobody uses them because they don't want to pay for gas or the tolls. That cost them 11 billion. And look, we're in Montreal, where it cost us $5 billion after interest, and it affected the infrastructure. That's one reason why Montreal didn't touch anything for so long, because we were still paying off the debt.
We are still paying it off.
We are still paying. The IOC in the 90s used to take 4% off of the revenues. Now, for Rio, it took 70%. I mean, that's kind of cartel territory.
Whoa. From 4 to 70 in what?
In 20 years, not even, which is ridiculous, right? And I mean, look, it takes 10 years to lobby and bid to get the Olympics. It cost Chicago $100 million just to bid for the 2016 games. So, whether you're looking at it as a fan, there's enough distastefulness going on, and if you're looking at it as an analyst or just like as an organization, there's enough to kind of look the other way. But nonetheless, whenever it rolls around, you do get, every time you try to get out, it does pull you back in.
Pull you back in, right?
Yep.
But what about the ugly? So there is good and bad, but there's a very ugly underbelly.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. So we work in the online media space. Our media is supported by advertising. So I want to just draw a few parallels and just, I'm going to leave a few points there to add some context to the discussion. Setting aside the ratings, which actually were not bad, but forget the ratings discussion. This week you had a lot of marketers come out and say, look, they pointed to Facebook and Google and YouTube, and we are biased as being a YouTube media company, but they said, unless you clear this fake news stuff, we may not run ad campaigns with you.
Referring to the swamp. Right?
The swamp, yeah, drain the swamp, this fake news, all this ad brand unsafe content if you want our ads. And I get that. I totally get that. But then I'm like, well, wait a second. I'm not hearing, if fake news is bad, which it is, but I'm not hearing any of these marketers telling the IOC, you know what? If you're going to have all these bribery and all of this corruption going on.
And the doping.
And the doping, then we're not going to sponsor, and sure, the athletes pay, but if the athletes then stand up to the governing nations and then the IOC, you'll see change, right? Hopefully. You don't really get any of that. And then worse, even than the doping to me and the bribery, is the sex abuse and misconduct that you saw. Again, as a father of a 9 and 7-year-old, maybe I don't want my kids to even watch the Olympics, right? So I do see a layer and layers of hypocrisy here saying, if you're going to now, if you want to penalize Russia, then don't let the athletes go. Then maybe they'll be pissed at Putin. Maybe. Yeah, I know that's oversimplifying it. Right. But my point is the Olympians representing Russia, I mean, they're going to get back, they'll get their Ferraris if they win. Putin will take care of them, so to speak, right? So, and again, if the IOC is going to come down harsh on Russia for doping, which is bad, why are the Olympics not coming harshly on the US Olympic Committee for the sex misconduct and abuse of underage girls at the University of Michigan training facilities and all that.
It's hypocrisy.
It's hypocrisy. Yeah. Now, you could argue, well, that's summer, that's winter, that's a detail. You could argue, ooh, it was too recent. What better way to make an example than say, hey, we're going to lower the boom? I'm not hearing any advertisers say anything, and I'm not really hearing the media point out these hypocrisies. And I definitely don't want to sound like President Trump, who's like, oh, forget Russia, forget Russia. But now you understand when all of this narrative bubbles up, and it boils down to hypocrisy.
So sports it's not just pure sports. There's a whole lot of politics that goes into this.
Yeah, and I think you expect that, and it goes back to 15, 16 years ago when they made a decision to not go with Big Pound.
Now, we've talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly. What about solutions? And one thing that I heard on the radio recently is someone suggesting in the idea, if cities are not going to want to bid anymore, why not just make one permanent city, and that's where we hold, one city for the summer, one city for the winter, something that already has infrastructure. Is that a solution?
I think it's a solution. There's a sports analyst, Andrew Zimbalist, who actually came out and proposed that as well. It's a common, obvious solution. You could basically say the Summer Olympics will be in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. That is a no-brainer. It's the second largest city in the wealthiest, most capable country in the world to host the Olympics. The infrastructure is there, media facilities are there. If you think about it, a city needs 35 venues to host the games. Then what you need in terms of media, what you need in terms of housing. So the summer games, just put them in LA. Nobody is really going to complain. Now, of course, again, the backdrop of if you have this immigration ban stuff, then you can't do that. Now, for the winter games, it gets a bit more interesting because, look, whether you admit that there's climate change or not, a lot of places where you used to have winter and certain kind of weather, you don't have it as much. But I think these Scandinavian countries could kind of serve as a hub where, a year it's Norway and Sweden, a year it's Sweden and Finland. I know there's always rivalries, but that I view, and that's not something he proposed, but to me that's a more elegant solution. That said, if you're the IOC, the committee, and you're getting all these bribes from all these countries, Kazakhstan and whatnot, then I think that you're not going to love the idea. So we'll see what happens, but that to me is the sanest way to go about it because, Brazil had to cut healthcare and the police to fund the Olympics. That makes no sense.
Like you said, context is king. So thank you. There will be plenty more discussions. Thank you guys for tuning in, and let us know what you think in the comments.